Okay, good morning, guys. Um, remember during the last lesson, I showed you a couple of things. One was the pine cone. The other one was the landscape. So I want to do pine cone phase two. So remember, we started with copying a pine cone. Okay, this is from a fir, but I couldn't find a white pine anymore. And this was the finished work. Remember that, right? This one or this one with the finished work. So first we start with blocking in the general shape, the overall shape of the pine cone. Here, this is better. The overall shape of the pine cone, and then we find the number of rows of scales that the pine cone has, and so that would be 1 and 2, and then the third stage would be when we block inside the space for the scales, the specific scales, trying to copy them as precisely as we can. Eventually, we end up with a clean drawing like this, right? And but you spend your time working on this. I like to work, and this is a method that I was taught in Italy in college when I was doing scientific illustration, medical illustration, and because you can really increase your precision as you move from stage to stage without having a background of searching lines, sketching phases, etc. So once you have this working here, you can do two things. Use this to transfer it onto your watercolor paper, or use a photocopy of that, right? I'm saying make a photocopy. Making a photocopy is better because what you have to do at this point, you turn it over like this, and then rub some graphite in the back of the of your drawing. And clearly, if you do it on a transparent paper, you're gonna lose. I mean, it's not a big deal, but you cannot really make any more photocopy. You have to erase the back. So just make a photocopy and then transfer. Just rub graphite in the back of your photocopy. And I'm using anywhere between a 3B to a 6B or something like that. And you want this to be smooth. So in order to limit the fuzziness of the mark, when you transfer this, right, look, when you transfer this, right, you see a mark in there that tend to be a little bit fuzzy and thick. So in order to kind of limit that, what I do, I rub this graphite a little bit to smooth it out, right? And the mark that I do on when I transfer is going to be a little bit softer, a little bit less, a little bit sharper, right? So today I'm going to use a piece of paper that is hot press arches, and it's smooth, right? So last week we used I used the cold press. This is hot press. A hot press has a finer, flatter finish. So I'm gonna use. I like this tape a lot. This is a magic tape by 3M. This paper is fairly sturdy, so I could put a piece of tape up here, and when I peel it off, it's not going to ruin the paper. But what you could do, you could kind of, soften it up a little bit, take off a bit of the adhesive qualities of the piece of tape, and that way you're even more safe that that tape is not going to rip the paper out. So then at this point, I take a harder pencil, right, and I'm gonna start tracing this. I'm gonna start tracing this And of course, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to interrupt the movie now, but you get the idea. But I want to show you how this really works, right? See that? It's barely visible. Let me see if I can. Right. Is it visible? There, should be visible, right? It's barely visible because later what you could do, you could leave it as is, or you can retrace it. It's an elaborate process, but it's very precise. So we see how the watercolor can be used in. Don't lose that. There you go. Otherwise, got to redraw it. The watercolor is can be used in a very loose, extemporaneous way, and also in a much more deliberate, accurate, precise way with layers. So let me show you now a couple of examples. I'll be back in a second. A couple of examples of watercolors done with a layering technique. So this from a friend of mine. These are reproduction. He sadly passed away 2 years ago, and he was making this beautiful calendar for an Italian perfume firm, and they're all over Italy and Europe. And I have all the calendars. So he was using not watercolors, but Ecoline. He was using these inks that are already diluted and have really bright colors. These were originally used for map making when back then everything was made by hand, and they're very, very transparent and very, very bright. So it's perfect for map making because you would first ink the map and then put over it this very transparent layer of liquid. It's an aniline, right? And it will not obfuscate the line even minimally because it was very, very transparent. So see, look how beautiful these are, right? So these are works that instead I did for years ago for the Genoa Aquarium and in Baltimore Aquarium. These are made. Let me see. These are made with these anilines, right? And they are very, very detailed. Some of my works are more detailed than that, right? And angelfish, queen angelfish, and you see how all the scales here are detailed because these the number of scales, the size of the scale, the position of the center line here, the position of the lip, all these things, the number of spines in the back of the fish are all they had to be very, very precise because they tell about the characteristic of the species. So with a technique like this, you can create very, very detailed artworks. These are some more things I did for publication of the fish of my region. This is a grayling, and you see also these have to be very, very precise. So the watercolor is put down in a layered way, very deliberately. And see if I can get this to you. And so it's another approach. In this case, in here, see that white there is not the white of the paper, but it's a very, very thin layer of gouache put on top the finished watercolor. But in this case, in here, instead, I left the white of the paper to create that shiny reflection. So I painted around it. So there are different ways of obtaining, this is another one, obtaining that the white the subject. So in this case, in here, see that the white, that's the white of the paper. So I left it white and painted around it. So we're gonna work on this later, and we're gonna show you how to draw a fish, right? So now this is what we need today. We need, sorry, I should have done this earlier, but we need a piece of paper. I would start with a piece of hot press, right? Hot press paper, 140 pounds. Our colors, the same brushes, these two, plus I would also use, actually, this brush in here, plus I would also use a number 1 or number 2 round, and the pine cone, right? So let's get now to the next stage. I'm going to finish transferring this, and I'm gonna show you how to start layering colors.